Chinese super soldiers, Chinese Avengers, hot chins soldiers, MMA fighters. Chinese President Xi Jinping has tried it all. He even gave his soldiers comfortable libraries, gaming centers, gyms, and jacuzzis so that they would fight better. But Chinese soldiers only know two things: freezing and wanking. Of course, Chinese soldiers also have unmatched expertise in crying. But none of that helps the CCP's cause of defeating India in a conflict. India is way ahead of Chinese soldiers. Indian soldiers really just need to clap their hands, and Chinese soldiers will immediately wet their pants. And China has nobody but itself to blame for the mess it finds itself in. It underestimated India and its soldiers while grossly overestimating its capabilities. Hi and welcome. This is TFI English, the national socio-political analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I am your host Tribhuvan, and in this video I will tell you how China's miscalculation led to them being slaughtered by Indian soldiers. Let's begin. Chinese President Xi Jinping has exposed the People's Liberation Army, also known as PLA soldiers, to great personal harm. Over the past year, the Chinese PLA has been facing a spate of casualty at the hand of the Indian Army and the extreme climate of eastern Ladakh, where India and China are locked in a fierce military standoff. At the root of the entire issue is a big miscalculation on China's part regarding the capabilities of the Indian Army. The Indian Army is a professional military service, whereas the Chinese PLA is just a gang of armed men that operates as the armed wing of the Chinese Communist Party. Therefore, while the Indian military establishment made a proper assessment of the threat posed by China, the PLA remains somewhat oblivious to the capabilities of the Indian Army. Since 2018, the PLA's online media has released several video and articles about India. Strangely, none of them discusses India's military might. They have been concerned only with India's arms purchases from countries like US. Even during the Ladakh military standoff, the PLA media avoided making an in-depth discussion about India's military might. Science of Military Strategy, a book released by the PLA Academy of Military Science in 2013, served as the most detailed coverage of India amongst all recent PLA studies. The Science of Military Strategy was translated into English by the US-based China Aerospace Studies Institute in 2021. The 2030 study argued that India's post-Cold War strategy has been all about maintaining military supremacy and hegemony in South Asia region, keeping China and other big powers out of its league. The 2013 publication was written in a different environment when there was a 3-week-long standoff between India and China. The Chinese PLA troop had infiltrated and set up position 19 km inside Indian territory. The report which followed the incident made the chilling revelation that India had lost 640 square kilometers of land due to area denial set by PLA patrolling. The then Indian Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh faced questions that he could not answer and was an easy prey for Xi Jinping, who was testing the waters with belligerent tactics at the border. Beijing probably thought that India wasn't looking to match China's military strength, given the Depsang standoff in 2013. However, China remains anachronistic to date. It doesn't understand that a lot has changed over the last 8 years. India elected a new Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, a tough leader with a nationalist agenda for whom national security is the priority. Since then, India has developed a firm outlook against Chinese belligerents and has been building up its military strength with the acquisition of lethal weapons and the construction of world-class infrastructure, including an extensive road network along the effective Indo-Tibetan border. Close to 70% of the Chinese military force is comprised of single children with no siblings. As such, they have been brought up as pampered little emperors by parents and grandparents. Chinese families are very emotional about their children since there is only one. Effectively, millions of children grew up believing that they were little emperors. Such children turned soldiers on their part too have the least interest in dying for CCP. Therefore, even in the combat field, Chinese soldiers prefer the easier way out, and it usually involves surrendering to the enemy force. Such behavior is directly attributed to the extremely low morale of the Chinese troop. The situation with the PLA is so grim that China today trusts lifeless weapons and machines more than it trusts its soldiers, who, by the way, suffer from excessive masturbation addiction. The People's Liberation Army of China's only justification to exist in the modern world is that they emerged victors in the Chinese Civil War. Apart from that victory, there isn't much for the PLA to count for. The last year war, which the Chinese armed forces fought, was in 1979 against Vietnam, where Ho Chi Minh handed the Chinese soldiers their pants. Chinese soldiers who also have a knack of crying and breaking down at the drop of a hat. But then what better can you expect from wimps who are forced MMA and Kung Fu trainer by the CCP, even when they could be in their beds doing what they do best? Working towards world domination, the CCP has been looking to produce biologically advanced super soldiers for the PLA to gain an unfair advantage over its adversaries and obviously to make up for the sissy-like behaviors of PLA troops. The Paper Dragon has been contemplating the deployment of biotechnologically tinkered little emperors against its primary foes. Essentially, China has grossly overestimated the capabilities of its soldiers, which is why it got a rude shock from India last year. An arrogant China has consistently argued that India's show of military might is often meant only for domestic consumption and has no strategic significance. Yet, when the Indian Army and PLA troops exchanged blows at the Galwan Valley last year, several Chinese troops were hacked to death by the battle-hardened Indian Army soldiers. Similarly, India had also taken control of strategic heights near LAC in a surprise retaliatory move that had caught China napping. While India reported and honored the ultimate sacrifice made by 20 Indian soldiers, the Chinese side hid the number of casualties. The estimates made by the Indian establishment pegged Chinese casualties over 40, whereas US intelligence reports pegged the number at 35. Russian state-owned news agency TASS claimed that 45 PLA soldiers had been killed in the clashes. China, on the other hand, denied memorial to its dead soldier, and to top it all, Chinese officials contradicted each other several times as they attempted to mention the number of dead Chinese soldiers. China has publicly accepted only 4 deaths so far, and the admission came over several months. Such humiliation was a result of China being rather naive and dismissing India's strategic moves as an attempt to mobilize domestic opinions or to divert public attention. China faces a tough Indian army, and its miscalculation has led to several PLA troops getting slaughtered.